friend that's going to be back.
Okay.
I knew something happened.
Because when yeah.
There's been some incredible food here this week, that's for sure. Somehow I think when you mentioned bacon.
Hey, have you seen this one? Have you seen this one?
They really do.
Whichever one's birthday is. Doesn't matter. Thank you. For a couple days after Christmas, I take a dolly. Thank you. Thank you.
It's okay. Okay, it is 1 o'clock, so I am going to go ahead and get started. But first I wanted to say what a great conference. It has been a really good conference. I love this conference, and I always think if I can take away one super solid thing and walk back into a classroom with it, it is successful. And let me just tell you how many things that I am so excited to take back to our teachers. So just to introduce myself, one second. I seem to be frozen for 1 second. Well, there we go, perfect. Okay, my name is Dana Dembeck, and I am an instructional technology coach for Frederick County Public Schools. And you do see another name up there, and that is my partner in crime that we do a lot of things with, and also my friend Thea Clark. And lots of you know Thea and are missing her this week, and she had a family emergency and would absolutely love to be here. Her heart is here with us. So she and I collaborated on everything, and a lot of the lessons that you're going to see, Thea and I have done together, separately built. So just wanted to make sure that you know Thea wanted to be here and theoretically would be here in spirit. Our other colleague, Denise, she just passed out a green paper. And if you would just take a couple of minutes, and the purpose of this is what you're already doing in your classroom, or if you're a coach and the classrooms that you go into, like what are you seeing that people are already doing? Like the question is, do you ever ask your students to go back and fix something? And just jot a quick list of things that you might go back and ask them to fix. It doesn't necessarily have to be in language arts, even though I know we're doing children's books. We use children's books in all subject areas. It's our love right now. We teach everything with a book. So just take a few minutes and jot those things down. And those of you guys watching virtually, if you have just a pad and a paper or something, just think of some ideas that you would ask students to go back and fix, something that you would ask them to do step by step, something that you would ask them to break something down into a smaller part. So the things, locate key information. When would you be asking your students to do these kinds of things? So I'll give you just a couple of minutes to brainstorm those ideas. So let's think about all of those things that you're already doing and think about the connection to computer science. So if we look at it this way, thinking, asking students to go back and fix something. That's a vocabulary word for computer science that we use, debug. And I will tell you, I was in a 4th grade class last week, and the teacher, I was in there for a writing experience, and the teacher was asking them to go back and edit. So I said, well, let's change it up a little bit. Let's use the word debug. And we talked to the students about, you know what debugging is? Oh yeah, that's what we do when we code and things like that. Yes, well, think of that as debugging. You are now debugging your writing. And somehow it made it so much more fun. Like, oh, it's fun to debug, okay. Like you're not asking me to do something that, you know, is excruciatingly painful. And they were willing to go back and do that. And I know it's not that easy all the time, but it was just a light moment in the classroom. And the teacher was like, well, gosh, if I'd have known that, I would have been asking them to debug all year. So that was a way to kind of slide that vocabulary word in there. But we'll go back to it later because it's not sufficient just to give them the word. It's sufficient for them to see what the word does. What is the meaning behind the word? What's the concept behind the word? And the concept is in computer science is they're analyzing it and they're looking for that, what's wrong, and they're fixing it. And that's what they do in their writing and their reading and their math and those kinds of things. So step-by-step process algorithm. Who wrote something for algorithm? What do you do step by step? Anybody? Think of something that you would add. What are you thinking?
In the library, how to use the listening station.
Perfect.
I think first this, then this.
Absolutely. This step, this step, this step. What were you thinking? Yes.
The writing process, and then also math concepts like long division.
Perfect. Like think of order of operations. It doesn't work if you don't do it in the right order. So all of those things, and I always tell the kids when I'm going in and we're talking about an algorithm, I talk to them about when they're putting information into their computer. If you put the wrong password in, guess what? You can't get in. And they always, oh yeah, you have to go back and fix it. And they're like, oh, we can debug. So if we're just sliding those things in, because we know it's not one more thing for you. Teachers can't do one more thing. There's only so many minutes in the day, but if we can help them integrate, then the lesson becomes more powerful with that computer science support behind it. So thinking about breaking something down into smaller parts. You know, some things are overwhelming to students and it's huge. Even in a paragraph, they're reading a paragraph. Well, I want you to look at a particular sentence or a word inside of a sentence, something like that. So that is the decomposition of things. Abstraction. How many times do we ask our kids the main idea? We just want the main idea. We want the key information. So think about eliminating parts that you don't need and just that key information. But if we can teach it together, it just has so much more validity for students. And think about the repeating information. This is probably my favorite because I love kids' books and I have a reading background. And so the repeat information inside of a book, like brown bear, and we'll talk about that in a little bit, even using it with 5th grade, because if it's perfect for getting into computer science because it's something that students already know. So hopefully this whole point of this exercise was to let you guys know that you're already doing so much of it. If we just make a tiny little change, then we have the best of both worlds. So what is computer science? And I feel fairly certain that we do know what computer science is, but you know what? I go back and look things up all the time. I think I know what all the vocabulary words are, but you know, there's so much going on in your head. Sometimes you just need to go back and look. And we talk to kids about computer science, and when it talks about human problems, we use the term real world problems. And that makes sense to kids. There are a lot of problems in their worlds. So if you can connect it to something they care about, then you have them. So all about using computer technology for real world problems. So lots of misconceptions. And, you know, I went to tons of sessions and I heard this over and over, and it is so true that there are misconceptions with computer science. And there are lots of strands. And when you ask kids about computer science, or sometimes teachers, I have the pleasure of doing PLCs in my schools and working with teams of teachers and teaching. A lot of my day I spend co-teaching with teachers and doing lessons. And when they think computer science, I ask them, when you hear that, what do you think of? They always tell me coding, which is perfectly fine because it is part of computer science, but it is not the whole of computer science. So there's lots of things that we can talk about that they never have to use their Chromebooks before. We are a one-to-one division in Chromebook. So our K1 students have touchscreens, and our 2-5, they don't have touchscreens there, but we are one-to-one division in Google. So here are the 6 strands, and I think that you've probably seen them all week. But just incorporating these 6 strands and thinking about it, it's just a different way of thinking. Like when I was growing up and something wasn't working for me, my dad would always say, Dana, change your lens, change the way you look at it. And that's a powerful thing to say to students. They're really struggling with something. Well, let's change the way you look at it. Let's change the way that we're thinking about it. And we'll get to computational thinking here in just a little bit. Well, it came sooner than I thought. I thought there was another slide there. So computational thinking, it's about the logical process. And this is probably one of my favorite quotes. We need to teach kids how to think, not what to think. For years and years and years, we've just told them, this is how you do it. This is how you do it. But that doesn't work for us. It doesn't work for them anymore. But to teach them how to think about doing it for themselves. And one of the things for computer science for me is telling them it's okay if you don't get it right. Sometimes, most of the time, I tell them you're going to learn more when you fail or when it's wrong, like when we do unplugged coding, than what you ever do if you did it right the first time, because it doesn't cause you to go back and think. So I had a little boy one time and said, you want me to fail? No, I don't want you to fail. I just want you to think about what you're doing. And I want you to know it's okay if you do it wrong. And sometimes we don't let teachers do that either. There's such a time crunch, but it's okay to get it wrong because that gives us the opportunity to go back and think about it and then redo. So components of computational thinking, which we did on our green sheet earlier, the abstraction and the decomposition and all those pattern recognition and algorithms, they float so nicely inside of children's books. There's such a connection that you can just pop them in there. And I love sitting around and brainstorming with teachers and just passing out books. Have them read it. The first part is like, oh, I haven't read this in so long, or this or that. And then let them go through the books and think about, where does this fit? Where does this integrate? You have to teach the subject matter, like particularly, I know that our teachers have to choose have to teach the life cycle of a plant. Well, here's a great computer science book, Addie's Perfect Patterns and Loops. Oh, no, I picked the wrong up. There's one about the garden, the if-then garden. The if-then garden is perfect for teaching parts of a plant. It's perfect for the life cycle of a plant. So seamlessly, you can put these things together. So here we go, integration and connection. And before we hop into that, I do want you to know that Thea and I do a lot of research. And we love this part. Like, we love reading all these books. We love finding books. We even probably like getting these for Christmas gifts. But we do a lot of background information and a lot of front loading because our teachers don't have a lot of time to do that for themselves. So these are just a few things that we just a few of the things that we've read. We had to order 2 more bookshelves to go behind our desks at our office because our books are on the floor and overflowing, and the custodian probably not happy with us. But we do a lot of background things. And you saw that bit.ly on the very front. We are giving you all of this information. So the book lists and the unplugged coding mats and things like that, we're going to hope that you use those and hand those off. So our job is to form that partnership that relationship with teachers, for them to know that we're coming in to help you. You know, we are your equal in the classroom. We are your partners in crime. We are going to be doing this together. So that's something that we really work hard on, in blending what we know. And because our teachers, they're the content experts. They know their kids better than we do. They're with them every day. So we work hard when we go into a classroom and say we're going to do computer science, to not make it one more thing, to make it a perfect integration opportunity where we can overlap and we can talk about vocabulary and we can do all of these things while you're teaching your language arts block or while you're doing math workshops and things like that. Lots of times we go in and we man the rotations, like we're using EBooks and things like that, because we're really teaching the sequence of the story, but we're using the unplugged coding mats and the EBooks to do it. So you're integrating all of those things together, because you can't do one more thing. Teachers can't do one more thing, but they can have a lot of fun with the integration. And that's where we come in, helping the integration piece. So the goal is to make those connections. And I talked a little bit about this earlier. When we just expose the vocabulary words, that's wonderful. Exposure in kindergarten to those words. I've heard that word before. I know what debug means. I know what loop means. I even know what algorithm means. But the concept behind the words is where it's happening and where there's a deeper meaning. And that's not going to happen overnight. So just with the repetition, we talked to our little ones about, did you brush your teeth this morning? Yeah. And, you know, some of them probably didn't, but they tell you they did, you know, they didn't. But we talked to them about, well, what's the steps of brushing your teeth? And I always say to them, okay, so is this going to work? I'm going to grab my toothbrush. I'm going to brush my teeth real quick, and I'm going to put it under the water. I'm going to put the paste on it, and then I'm going to put it back in the container. I'm done, right? And then, you know, they're all, yeah, you can't brush your teeth like that. Well, guess what? It's out of order. It doesn't work if it's out of order. So we can talk to them about things that they're doing all the time. One of the teachers said, I taught them algorithm by how I needed them to line up to go to their PE classes and their resource and lunch and things like that. And she said, let me just tell you, I got comments taking them down the hallway because they were less than cooperative when I needed them to walk down the hallway quietly. But I say to the kids, you know what? We're going to do our lineup algorithm. Let's do this. And they do it because they know, and they love to correct each other? Of course they do. But they get in line because they know it's a step-by-step process. I get up, I push my chair in, you know, I get in line the way that I'm supposed to, and then I move to where I'm going. Perfect way, walking down the hall, to talk to them about, we just performed a step-by-step process, and we can call that an algorithm. So thinking about the concept actually behind the vocabulary word. So here are some connections when we think about the computational thinking strands and pieces and things like that. So over here, we talk about an algorithm, and we talk about that the author follows steps to write a story. We talk about that we have authors sometimes that they come into our, our librarians are fabulous people because they get all these authors for us, and they just have this magical place that the kids love in the library and all of those things. So we talk about when you're getting ready to sit down and you're doing a read aloud with your students, you can talk about very quickly that the author had to follow an algorithm. The author had to do, there's a certain way that they write a book. There's a certain way that, there's a beginning, a middle, and an end to the book, and they have to put certain things in there. So they have to follow a certain sequence to write a book, just like they would. So if we talk about the decomposing of things, I focus on the main idea of the story. Things like that, or all the way around. We try to put some connections in there. The abstraction idea and the patterns. How many books do you guys pick up, like Brown Bear, and The Napping House, and Silly Sally, and all those things that constantly have a repetition? That's a loop. The author is doing that over and over and over again. And when you're reading that piece over and over and over again. You talk about the author's purpose. Well, why does the author have that line over and over and over again? Because it's really important. It does something to the story. That's a loop, a computer loop. when you put that loop in, it's very important because it does something to that computer code. So just making those connections while you're already, reading and doing the things that you have to do in your language arts block. And here we go, loop, sequence, and debugging. The repeating in the sentence, the beginning, middle, and the end. I found a problem in the story that needs to be fixed. Think about Each Kindness. Have you guys read Each Kindness by Jacqueline Woodson? So sorry. There's a huge problem in that storyline. So think about, there's something that needs to be fixed. So think about those kinds of things and maybe a little bit outside the box that I can integrate that in, but I can do it while I'm already sitting there and I already have that language arts lesson planned. One of the things that we do, we teach a computer science academy in Frederick County, and now we're doing level 2 because we already have a whole group of teachers that have gone through the first one, and now we're doing the level 2. So what they're doing is they're bringing their lesson plans in, and they're looking at where can I seamlessly integrate the computer standards? Where can I seamlessly get this in here? Well, I don't have to do a whole lot of changing because I don't have time to write two sets of lesson plans. So once we have all of those compiled, which we already have a pretty good repository of them, then they go out to all the teachers to share. And we're putting them in Go Open Virginia and things like that. So we're sharing the wealth, but they're doing it. It's amazing. You know, the second level of the academy, it's like they just do it. It's like maybe they didn't need us this second time around, but they just do it. Oh, you know what? This fits really nicely into this lesson that I've been doing for a couple years out of my, my regular reading series. This is a story I have to read, but oh, now I see a computer science connection in this story. Any questions so far? Okay, so exposure to the vocabulary is important. We talked about the benefits of understanding the concepts behind it. So let's take a look. How are you doing this? Like, are you wondering right now, okay, all this sounds great, but how do you do it? So, and we always make sure, even before we go in and do it with a teacher, you know, you guys have those teachers, if you're coaches or you work with somebody, you have someone that you can say, hey, can I come in and practice this with your class? Can I do this with your class? Because I would never go to a PLC or anywhere and tell you to do something that I don't know if it works or not. And we work really hard on that. So I go and I find a teacher and I said, you know what, I think this lesson is going to be great. And I kind of look at their lesson plans or their timeline and I know what they're teaching. And I say, can I come in and help you teach that? And can we integrate? And that's all of the lessons that we're doing. We've done that. Like everything that we're showing you, we've already done in a classroom or 10 classrooms, and we both have 2 schools, so grade levels and things like that. So we do it with books. So these are books that actually are the computer science books or the technology side of things. So you're going to notice the technology tale up there. It's one of our favorites, and we actually build a technology tale and then we move it into Scratch and do all those things. But again, these are the basis of these computer science books. And again, we're giving you our book list down there so you can have everything that we use. And then we spin these. We spin these into math and science and language arts and all of those things. And then we have a whole set of books that we use that start with that language arts base. But first, let's talk about our Unplugged Coding. And we have done so many things with Unplugged Coding. And when I talked to you a little bit before about Brown Bear, when we were, and I know the standards and all the research that you read, it talks about, you know, like the K2 kids, perfect for Unplug, and then we move them towards Scratch and all those things, it works great. And they talk to you about 3-5 kids that they should really be on the computers all the time coding. And that's good too. But if they don't know the basic, if they don't know what the coding is, if they don't know why they're coding, Unplugged Coding is wonderful for 3-5. We just did the coaches at my one elementary school, and all of us got together and we just did a whole Thanksgiving unit on Unplugged Coding. I mean, we used a Turkey for Thanksgiving by Eve Bunting. Have you guys heard of that story? It's such a cute story. But you know what, the fifth graders loved it. And we worried about that. We thought, wow, you know, how's this going to go for fifth grade? You know what, they love that story. And many, many, many of them said, we've heard that story before. We read that story before. And we said, great, because now you're looking at the story with a different lens. Now you're looking at it for a different purpose. And it's perfectly fine, we found, to read a book over and over to the kids when they're changing what they're looking at. They're changing their focus. So this time we were focused on unplugged coding. So I used Brown Bear in a fifth grade class. And as soon as I came in, right off the bat, one of the kids like, I read that in kindergarten. Like, I know, I probably read that to you in kindergarten. But we used it just to explain how unplugged coding works. We used it for them to write a very easy algorithm. It was a fifth grade class that struggled a little bit. Great group of kids. They just had, you know, some of them had some struggles in this area or that area, but I knew they could read this book. I knew they knew the order of the book. I knew that because I wanted this part to be super easy because we were doing the coding piece of it. So now we're learning the algorithm of it, and we're writing the algorithm, and we're testing the algorithm, and we're debugging, and we're going back with a story that they're so familiar with. So that wasn't the hard piece. They didn't have to go back and really look in the story, which the goal really is to have them go back and look in the story because we want them to get that reading experience. But this is the one that's the easiest to start out with because they knew it. So these are some, again, some coding mats. And we're giving you all of our stuff as well, and we don't care. You're perfectly fine if you want to go in, and like some of them have distraction in there. We put distractors in there because we want them to, you know, be able to take out the pieces that they don't need and all of those things. But we have done mostly with our coding mats, like you'll see this down here. This is their sheet that they're going to record on. We use Seesaw for a lot. So I'm going to show you our unplugged list and anything that we built a Seesaw lesson for. If you use, anybody use Seesaw? Lots of Seesaw. And if you don't use Seesaw, what we've built for you, the basic free version, if you wanted to use it, it works right inside of that basic free version. We didn't give you anything that you had to pay for. But like you can see, these are sight words, and then we have the common sense media piece, and those are our characters there. And then we're into, we use Will You Be My Dog? I don't even think that's what it's called anymore. In my head, it's called that. It's called Can I Be Your Dog? But we use that, it's perfect for letter writing. If you guys read that story before, if you haven't read the story, grab a tissue. Super good story. And there's a follow-up one for the cat. The cat one really you need a tissue for. But this is about a dog that writes letters because he has no home. And he's writing letters to all of the town's people. And I won't spoil it for you, but it's perfect sequence. But it's also perfect to teach kids how to write a friendly letter. It's perfect to teach all of those things that they need to have in writing. It's also perfect for reading comprehension, to hit those reading comprehension strategies. So we use unplugged coding. And unplugged coding looks like this for us. So this is the Can I Be Your Dog? And I did, when you get this, it does have the correct title on it. I did fix that. But what we do is sometimes we use a sentence strip, and the kids have little arrows that they use, and they lay them down on a sentence strip, and they follow their arrows. And we have given you all of our templates and things like that. So you also can use these, and they can use a dry erase marker. They can use the vis-a-vis, whatever you have. Whiteboards work perfectly fine. Most classes have whiteboards. So they're looking at the story, and they're going place to place. But what they're doing is they're putting their arrows here first, and they're building their algorithm like you would build. And then they're testing it with a mover. Like we have these little movers that the kids use, like game pieces. And we're going to share those with you too. You can have all of those, but they have this little dog, and we make sure that we use something that is like a person, because we want them to move the shoulders. We want them to get the directional words. Great way to teach at kindergarten and first grade: right, left, right, directional words, things like that, up, down. So all of those things that you are charged with teaching, maybe not inside of computer science, but they go right along with computer science hand in hand. Any questions about that? This is what the Seesaw Post looks like. So what we've done, the reason that we love Seesaw so much is because it might look good on their whiteboard, it might look good on paper, but when they turn the microphone on and they tell us about it and they recount what they're doing, that's where we hear the learning. That's where we hear that it's working or it's not. Are they debugging? Are they going back? You know, do they really get it? Do they understand the concept? And I know this is computer science, but math, if you are charged with teaching math and you have the kids do a long division problem in Seesaw and you have them turn that microphone on, you can hear it, whether they have it or they not. Repeated reading, if you have kids struggling with reading, it doesn't even have to be Seesaw, just listening to themselves read, unbelievable, because they can hear it. I have kids say all the time, is that how I really sound? I think I can do better. Let me go back and reread that. So we love that Seesaw piece. So how this works is this is exactly what it looks like when we assign it. This represents their sentence strip. These are all movable pieces. So they are moving their arrows to get Arfie down to, this kind of gives it away if you haven't read it, his home. So they pull their arrows down to here. Then their little dog moves and they move it according to the arrow, direction of the arrows. And if they get it wrong, they switch the arrows out. And then at the end, we ask them to turn on their microphone and talk about how they moved Arfie to the in sequential order, how they built the algorithm, and then we know if they got it or they didn't. And they really love it. They seem to really love doing this. And how this works is we go in and we generally co-teach the unplugged sheet with them. Like we do the concrete one with them. And we go in and we read them the story. That's my favorite part. And we talk about the story. And then we man all the stations and all the kids that are doing this with their unplugged coding mats and their coding sheets or their whiteboards or their sentence strips and their errors or whatever it is the teacher wants to use. Totally up to the teacher. And then when we leave, this is the lesson extension that the teacher assigns in Seesaw, maybe that day, maybe not that day, maybe another day later. And then I do go in and help the teacher if she's, if you do Seesaw and let's say that you have 25 kids and you have assigned 3 things a day in Seesaw, guess what? That's 75 things that you have to look in that night. And teachers completely overwhelmed with that number of 75. So a lot of times I ask the teacher, do you want me to go in with you? And I'll help you with that. And we'll look through that. And then that way we'll get a good, we'll get a good group. If they don't know what they're doing, let me come back and do a small group with them. So something like that. Any questions about these things? Okay. Just yell out. It's perfectly fine if you just kind of yell out at me. These are our unplugged retellings. And these are the stories, just a sample of the books that we use. The unplugged coding mats, we're going to give you that sheet, and I'm going to show that to you in just a little bit, but I just wanted you to see just a sample of the books that we use to kind of incorporate and integrate the computer science. These are some kid examples, and this is a little girl. And I put this here specifically because in kindergarten, sometimes we have them right on the mat, because that transfer of having the computer or the sentence strip at the bottom or the whiteboard, it's very difficult at first. So if we get them writing on the mat here and getting it, pencil, of course, then we can transfer making the code down here and then moving the little mover across the mat. So this is the Seesaw lesson that they had worked on the coding mat, and then they did the Seesaw lesson up there. This was using the sentence strip with Silly Sally. This is the gingerbread man. with a kindergarten class where they actually, the teacher, they were doing colors and shapes and things like that. So this lesson had a lot folded into it and things that we were trying to do with the students. And just coding was one of the things that we pulled into it. So thinking about how computer science supports comprehension and reading, which is our ultimate goal for our kids. So the algorithm, all stories follow a step-by-step instructions to get to the desired outcome. Think about conflict resolution. Think about developing a character, like how in your upper grades, how the author develops the character, like through the story and how that moves through. That's all in a sequential order. And if it gets out of order, it doesn't work. So a lot of algorithms go into reading and writing. Abstraction, eliminating details, focusing on important information, things that we all have to do, but it's also a concept in computer science. Decomposition, breaking something down into smaller parts. If you teach kindergarten or first grade, decoding words. Think about sorting. Sorting is huge in computer science because that's what your computer does, it sorts. And I tell the kids when we're doing word sorts, you're like a computer today. Now you have to sort your words. You have to sort them into specific groups that make sense. And there's a method to sorting these and things like that. So think about all of those things that you're already doing or your teachers are already doing that this can just slide so seamlessly into. Strategies you teach, cause and effect, the if-then. The retelling of the story, sequence of events, editing is when they go back, they analyze, they correct and improve that debugging right in there. These are probably 3 of my all-time favorite books in the world. I cry every single time I read Thank You, Mr. Falker, and I've read it dozens of times. And the kids always know, you're going to cry, aren't you? Yes, I am. Because sometimes I do read it more than once, because the first time we're reading it as a read aloud reading story or a text talk or something like that, the next time I come in, we're doing it for a different purpose, but it still helps the reading comprehension because maybe they missed something or they didn't understand something. So we're doing it again. That Samuel's repeated reading is amazing if you look at his research. Have you guys read Crown? Anybody read Crown? Crown is this amazing little boy, and Derek Barnes, if you have a chance to look him up, he is this really great author, and he talks about the background behind Crown. But it's a little boy that gets a fresh haircut. He goes in and he gets a fresh haircut, and he just feels like he's on top of the world when he walks out of the barber shop. And there's a barber shop in our town in Winchester that does a lot of like the haircut like this little guy has, and all the kids are like, where do we go to get that? But it's a great story to really incorporate computer science into, because it's a step-by-step process of getting your haircut. And when you ask a student, have you ever had your haircut? Well, yeah. Well, what is the process? And it makes them think outside the box a little bit. It's not just the process I'm reading in this book. It's real world. It's a real life problem. It's not a problem, but it's a real life issue. It's something I've done before. I've gone to a barber shop, or I've gone, to a hairstylist and things like that. So what are the steps? What happened? And they really have to think about what happened and think about it. There's a lot of feelings involved and things like that. So in Each Kindness, that I spoke of that book earlier, that is, again, one of my all-time favorites. It's a really good book to build community and culture in the very beginning of the year if you've not read it before, but there's a process. The best part of this is the author leaves you hanging. You don't really know what happened to the little girl that everyone was unkind to at the end of the story, but there's a great process to it, and you can really integrate those computer science standards into it while you're teaching something with such substance and such feelings. And a lot of the counselors, one of my counselors uses this in her counseling session. I said, hey, can I come with you and we can integrate some computer science in it? And she doesn't turn me down. She's one of my people, my go-to people. And oh yeah, sure, come with me. So we just kind of tag team and do that together. Talked about real world problems. We talked about real world issues. We talked about front loading. So I just wanted to show you some things that lead up to some of our coding and things like that. This came out of Jennifer Saravallo's strategy books. I don't know if you guys have seen those before, but I just wanted to share this because we don't just always jump to scratch. We don't just always jump to the coding. We do a lot in the classroom with the teacher to kind of front load all of the information. So I wanted to give you guys some templates. This is an in order one. We just kind of made this one up. This goes with Jacqueline Woodson's Each Kindness, but the progression of how the order of how the character was feeling in the story, and the author very methodically told us in order how the character was feeling. So this is a student's work: sad, lonely, embarrassed, determined. So that's the order of the emotions that I actually used with the counselor in this story. And we had to put that in order. These are two wonderful websites, maxw.com, that I found. And each one of these we use. They're less than like a minute, some of them just 30 seconds, but they're very good little clips on what is. So if you're going to introduce something, you're going to introduce algorithm and things like that. So I just wanted you to know it was out there. I did do some research behind the website, and the gentleman that put all this together was a teacher, and maybe he still is. He doesn't really say, but it has a really good, a solid background piece to it. These are EBooks, e-coding books. For students, but again, it's that language arts piece and that reading of the book. And all of these are free. They work on a Chromebook beautifully. I have not tried them on an iPad, but it did look like it was iPad compatible. I'm not sure what kind of devices that you guys have, but I just wanted to share these with you because they're a really good resource. Not something we built, but something we found and wanted to share. And this is probably, I hope that you guys are thinking, we don't want you to go out and buy books by any means. Well, maybe you do. This one you probably should get. But thousands of books are already in your schools. They're in your libraries. Think about all of the ideas. Maybe the next time you're doing that read aloud or that text talk or whatever it is you're doing, and that reading strategy, and you're using that story in your McGraw-Hill or HMH or whatever it is, how can I integrate? Where's my idea? Like, how do I get that in there? Do you guys have any questions? Anything that you're wondering about and thinking, I don't know if that would work or not? Anything like that? And I will tell you, everything that we tried, you're not seeing up here, because sometimes it really, truly doesn't work. And that's really okay. This is, if you guys are Hello Ruby people, we love Hello Ruby people. And if Thea were here, she would be talking so much about Hello Ruby. We use Hello Ruby books. We just love them. We found this little graphic that the Linda Lucas made, and we thought we would share that with you just to wish you a Merry Christmas. And then I'm actually going to get out of here. And I want to show you the Unplugged Coding Max. This is something that we're sharing with you. So you'll notice that there's the mat, and when it says movers, it's the little people that you kind of move. And I am going to do a giveaway here in just a little bit. So if Denise, she's going to come around and collect your she already has them. I tell you that, Denise, she's efficient. So we have two collections of Unplugged Coding mats. There are 25 mats in each one. The arrows are in here and the movers are in here. So we're going to give those away in just a second. But when it says movers, it means the piece that you would move on the Unplugged Coding mat. Some of them have the Seesaw lesson that goes with them. This is a document that we constantly are adding to. So, next week you might see more on it. So if you keep it live, you're welcome to, copy it and do your own thing with it. But if you come back to the live one every now and then, you're going to see some more things on there. You're going to notice that like the base 10 blocks with 2 digits, that's something we do with our littles when they're learning to count. And that's twofold, because they're counting their base 10 blocks. They're writing their number on their mat, and then they're putting their numbers in order. And some least to greatest, some greatest to least, but we're hitting the best of both worlds with that math content. We do one with order of operation in math. Lots of Snowflake Bentley, probably one of my favorites, goods and services for social studies. So lots of different ways that you can incorporate that computer science in there. Wanted to show you. Let's see. I did show you, I think this one. And again, that's what the Seesaw one looks like. If you do have Seesaw and you use multiple page, you can go, like we had the kids put, you can extend the lesson by asking the students to, like in the Thanksgiving one that we did, will you be my turkey? The turkey goes through the woods and, all of the animals are in order. Well, what animal would you put in the woods? What animal would fit in there? Just kind of science related and things like that. So just extending your lesson. So is there anything else before we start the giveaway that I can answer, email to you, send to you, anything? Yeah, let me put.
I don't think I got everybody, but did anybody sneak in the door and not get their name in?
This is my email address and Twitter if you would like to contact me. Okay, just have somebody pull those out. This is for the Can I Be Your Dog packet.
Big and deep, everyone. Rachel Kincaid.
Okay.
There you go. One more lucky winner. Let it be you. Kevin Ferguson.
I wish I were one of the big companies and I could give you something like, computers, big boards, whatever. But I just want to thank you for coming. You're welcome to come up. I know we have a few more minutes, so you're welcome to come up and look at any of the books, look at any of the mats if you would like. I know it's the end of the conference. Oh, one more thing. Anybody remember file folder games? We are bringing back the world of file folder games. So any of the mats that you make, you can put in your stations. Oh, I keep hitting that. Sorry. Sorry. But yes, the world of file folders has come back. Kids love these. And I don't know how we really got away from them, but they're pretty cool. And if you want to do that extra Seesaw step, we have the kids take a picture of their file folder game, talk about what they did in their file folder game, and submit it to the teacher. And that's a good accountability piece too. So think about that. So thank you so much for coming. I appreciate that you came and took the time at the end of the conference. So let me know if you need anything. You're welcome. Oh, one of you guys that won doesn't have their arrows.